Hello everybody, it's the Alco Diesel Guy, and I've got the B23-7 high-nose locomotive that I was planning to use for parts. You should have seen the video on this. By this point, it should be uploaded by the time this is here. If it isn't, well, let me give you a little background. I bought this thing for parts. It was essentially bought by someone who apparently ran it without a cab number and apparently broke the horn off and didn't care much about the details because essentially this is how it was run. And I bought a sister engine from the same seller, from a seller who apparently had either was the person who had it or bought it off that person, and both of these share the same trait of having their horns broken off. The other one has a number, this one doesn't. Now initially, again, this was going to be a parts source. I was going to use it to fix a few other locomotives. Then I got to thinking, this would probably be a good attempt for me, at least, to see if I can do a patch on one of these locomotives. I've done something similar in HO scale where I just painted out the logo of the locomotive that was on a National Railway of Mexico locomotive I did once or twice in a few other engines. Came out pretty well, but I never actually did anything with the numbers, although actually, yes, pardon me, I did. I actually blotted out one of the numbers and made a custom engine out of that, but I never actually physically tried to label a locomotive from scratch with a number, etc. The reason being is, much like my fellow YouTuber, Trains with Shane, I'll definitely post a link in my description of this video, I have no talent in art whatsoever. In fact, my handwriting is appallingly atrocious, and I am very highly dyslexic. Yeah, you probably don't want me doing commissioning me to do a painting. A child's kindergarten picture will probably look better than what I have, just to show you the limit in terms of the artistic ability I have. So yeah, just to explain what's going on here. Anywho, I digress. All that out of the way. What I'm going to do today is attempt to number this engine. I'm going to try to make it very simple. Let's see if we can get down a little bit closer in here, because again, this is an unnumbered locomotive, and with DCC you have to have a number on it. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to number this with a simple number. I haven't decided whether I'm going to do number like 11, number 1, number 2, and just scratch out the Norfolk Southern logo on it, and basically turn this in what we call a patch locomotive. That is to say, in the railroad / short line trade, not every railroad can afford to completely repaint their engines, and some of the lower end companies really can't afford it at all. So what you do in that case to avoid any copyright issues, trademarks of using the existing railroad that had this locomotive, or whatever locomotive you might have in service, is you just cross out the logo to make it very clear it's not theirs anymore, it's yours, and you renumber the number in a very cheaply done way. It's not the greatest looking thing in the world, but it is realistic, and I'm thinking that's the easiest way of rectifying this engine and putting it into service. So if I pull it off, great. If not, well, it can be a parts engine like I was planning to make it anyway. So anyway, to start with, I need a pen. I've decided I'm going to do just a paint pen. What I have here is a fine tipped one, and I also have a not so fine tipped one. I think I'm going to use the fine tip looking this over because very clearly this is going to require a very skinny writing, so I'm thinking I should just probably do that. I'm only going to number this one number. I think I'm just going to call it number 1 to make it easy. So again, here's my paint pen. This is an oil paint pen, which I picked up at my local Walmart. Okay, after Googling it, the conclusion I've come to is I have to press down several times to make this work, much like my Flux pen. So I'm going to use the actual package this came in. So again, this is made by Sharpie. And apparently you're supposed to do this a few times. And up there it goes. Ich bin ein Dummkopf. And I'm going to start speaking German again. So we're going to call this number 2. And oh yeah, it's working. I can smell the fumes. Let's try not to mess this up too badly. Oh, that didn't look too good. Try it on the other side. See if I can figure out how to do this. I probably should have maybe gotten a little practice with this first. Well, too late now. There we go. That one's much better. See if I can do this one better. I think I'm going to try to see if I can get this off here quickly. Oh, leave it sight. Ein Dummkopf. Ich bin ein Dummkopf. Alrighty then, we're back on this B23-7 project, and sorry, I thought I zoomed you in 0.3 times. Let's go back there at 3 times. There we go. Darn thing wasn't set right. And we are back on this project again. As you can see here, I have, again, as you saw in my last episode, if you just recapping, most it's in the same video, but I'll recap anyway. I did cross out this and did what's called a patch, because this is an unnumbered locomotive, so I renumbered it number 2. This kind of got a little messed up here, but it'll work fine. Again, that's kind of part of the charm. These engines would be very rustic and very done on a very tight budget by the railroad in real life. Pardon, tool that was in there in the shot. So having little mistakes in the paint like this are all part of the effect to make it look very rustic. Again, I've crossed out the Norfolk Southern logo. Well, actually, the Norfolk Southern thing on the side here, the writing in the official logo writing on the side here. Kept it in the front. I think I can get away with just leaving it like that. Same thing was on the side right here. And I wrote in 2 on both sides of the cab. Again, this is an unnumbered locomotive. It was apparently always run like that. It was a DC locomotive, so there was no need to worry about cab numbers. Whoever owned this ran it hard. It's missing its horn on the top here. I believe that's where the horn goes on the side. I'm going to have to double check, but I believe that's it on the side where the horn goes. I'm going to have to reinstall that one, or install my new one, rather. Let me go ahead and actually take the shell off and now, since I've gotten all the painting done, and take a look at the mechanics of this engine. I know it runs, but I don't know how well. Ooh, I just realized this is not in there right anymore. Ooh, I hope I didn't damage that. Yeah, I think that's okay. And now carefully remove the frame, the shell off the frame of the engine. There it is. This is the traditional, underneath the hood we have a traditional Atlas frame. And strangely enough, this is one of those engines that has me completely perplexed. Either this happened in the factory or something else, but again, this is yet another one of these engines I have gotten. I'll show you this again. So I move this shell out of the way so it doesn't get damaged. This is yet another one of these engines that does not have DCC, but has the frame isolated for it. It's got Kapton tape on both sides. There's no reason for this, to be honest, because there's no way it would need that. So clearly this at one point had a DCC decoder in it. It looks like someone may have maybe kept the got rid of the locomotive but swapped the decoder board on it. That's interesting. It may have come with a DCC decoder and the person bought it to get the decoder out and just swapped this in here and sold it to me because of that. Not sure what's going on here. It has this light. It has the light piece in place, so someone put that back in here. It's interesting. Again, I'm going to convert this to DC. I'm going to again convert this to DCC, so that comes right out. Let me go now and grab my screwdriver. These screws are pretty tightly in, but it looks to me like someone definitely was here before me, because this should not have insulation in it if it was a stock analog locomotive. The box itself on it, this is the original one, says decoder ready, so someone installed a decoder on this at one point, or for some reason decided to insulate it. I don't know if the factory did something like this, because I noticed there are quite a few of these that have just the factory board, the analog board, but yet they somehow or other have the and it doesn't make any sense for them to have it, the Kapton tape right here on these 2 sections. There's really no reason for it because of that. Go drop these trucks off. That's not loose enough yet, apparently. Don't want to force anything. Let's make sure I got this all the way out. So the screw is a bit stripped on that side. Here's the other truck off. Let's now get this thing apart safely. On tape insulated, and it really doesn't make any sense for it to be like that. Let's now carefully separate the 2 sides of this, the 2 halves of this. So again, this is the traditional Atlas split frame chassis. Most of these engines are like that for N-scale, with the exception of the newest runs. Okay, we got this all separated. Now, to avoid losing my parts, I'm going to put them in my magnetic parts tray back here. I know these parts are plastic, but some of them are magnetic, so I prefer to do it that way just to keep them safe, so I know where everything is as I work on this thing. Makes sense for me to split this apart, because either way to get the decoder in, I'm going to have to do it. Let's see about here. This is a stock board. I think this was put in by someone else. This looks like this at one point was converted for DCC. What's nice is it's got the modification done to it, so all I have to do is drop a decoder in there, and I have the perfect one that will work with this. Let's see if we have any lubricants piled up on this thing. It ran a little rough when I ran it. There's a hint of lubricant on here. I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go through and... Oh yeah, actually, here's the thruster washer. I'm going to take this out and actually put this in my parts bin. This thruster washer is kind of critical. I know you can get away without it, but it's to protect the plastic bearing from getting chewed up by the metal gear. This little plastic disc thing here. And it comes in handy because it'll stop the bearing from getting chewed up from from rubbing against this gear. And of course, I just managed to drop it. Nice going. This is also going to get cleaned out. Again, this might have lubricant on it, so I'm going to make sure all that is clearly cleaned out, since I'm going to go through all this trouble of rebuilding it. The trucks, let's see what they look like. Not the cleanest things around, admittedly. Yeah, they don't roll all that free. Oh yeah, this is getting stuck. These really do need to be worked on. Looks like this is going to have to get disassembled and put in there. One of my favorite things to do. And I say this is with as much sarcasm as I can possibly muster. Oh, there goes one of the contact pickup things. There we go. That's coming out. There we go. I got it. Separated it. Okay, all these are going to go in here and get cleaned up nicely, because those trucks definitely need a cleaning. The wheels are filthy on these things. I don't see much in the way of hair, I don't think, in these. Let me check this again. So it looks like this was definitely run on a layout. It wasn't run on the carpet, at least, but they're not in the greatest shape of their lives. But yeah, let's put them in there and let them get cleaned out. So I'm going to throw my worm gear assemblies in here. So here's what we got. We got the worm gear assemblies, we got the trucks, we got the truck pickups, wheels, everything else all assembled there. This is, again, this 91, try not to get you too far in here because I'm zoomed in. This is this 91% isopropyl alcohol. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. I actually zoom you out a little bit more to make this a little bit more viewable. There we go. I'm going to go now and drop this stuff in there once I open this pack. Open this thing up. There, baby, come on in. Well, if I'd moved the shell out of the way, I just realized it's in the corner there. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to put enough in that this actually submerges everything. Oh, a little bit ran out the side. I want to make sure that the highest piece of my equipment in there is submerged. About there. Let's now carefully stop this and not get any on anything else, hopefully. Here we go. Now I'm going to put the top of this back on. I always keep these tops. The reason being is I can now store this someplace, and if it falls over, it's not going to do any damage or make a mess or anything else, or the parts won't get lost. It'll just stay put. As you can see in there, they're all covered by the stuff. There's enough in there to keep it all covered, that everything is submerged. Submerged, not by very much, but enough that it'll clean itself. I'm going to go put this to the side, and I'm going to go then focus on getting the next part of this done. One thing I do note, and you can see how much mileage this locomotive has on it, if you look at the contact line right here, which actually runs on the side of the frame and sends power to the gets power from the trucks themselves, you can see right here where the contact nub from the actual truck makes contact with this, it's actually physically worn the brass away, so this is probably on its way out anyway. I'll probably keep these for a while, but I'll probably have to look for another one set of them, but they are worn out. They were run pretty hard. The other one's probably the same, but that doesn't really matter. You order them in pairs. I'll probably look to see if I can get a set for these. See if I can buy them online to make it work better. Now, so the motor is what I want to look at. This is actually in really good shape. It's spinning very easily. I'm going to clean the commutator because this is one of the models I can do that with. Let me actually go borrow some of that alcohol I just spilled out. And oh boy, right away. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Words of Richard Hammond from early Top Gear episodes. He always used to do that. Look at that. He would have this really high pitched, look at that. Not that I'm mocking him. That was actually, I always liked that. It was a pretty comical little thing he used to do. Let's go ahead now and go in here and clean this again. This is probably why this engine didn't run very well if it didn't. It did run when I had it, but it was a little bit rough. Now I see why. Not exact science of this here. What's nice about rubbing alcohol is it dries, is like all alcohol, it will dry very quickly. So you can get away with just exposing these parts to it and not worrying about it. The one thing you got to be careful, obviously, with is body parts like the paint and stuff, is once that gets exposed, you will take the paint off and you will cry if it's a prized possession. So just warning you right now on that. Make sure you don't expose this to paint. Let me actually get a little bottle cap and not disturb this anymore. I don't want to take a chance because it turns out this is dirtier than I thought. Let me go put this back in. I don't want to dip it in any more than I just did because I don't want to get any of that carbon mixed in with the parts I'm cleaning or I'm going to actually do is make it worse. I don't know how long this motor will last me, but I've got it, so I'm going to work with it, is my policy. If I have a motor that is workable, serviceable, I will try to keep it going as long as I can. Yeah, look at that. Oh, God. This thing is filthy. Using a towel to dry my brush off as I get this carbon off of here. I'm going to go back into my little bottle cap and just keep doing this. This is pretty much what I'm going to be doing here for a while until I get as much of this off as I possibly can. Part spin over here. So, next I'm going to go and do the motor itself. I'm just going to do the standard lubrication on the bearings of the motor. I'm not going to lubricate the commutator. I'm going to try using the... I think that'll actually fix any problems it had. It ran a little rough if I remember correctly. I'm just going to go in there. Oops, knock something over again on the back there. I'm going to go in here now and just put a little in here. Just need a little dot in there. Finish drying off on it. Okay, after another long delay, I'm now ready to do some work on the shell, but the mechanics now all being handled. Again, this locomotive's horn is missing. It's supposed to be right here on this spot. I looked at the one model I do have that's in good shape. That's where the horn goes, right here in this little spot that you can see clearly has something that should be there but isn't. So what I'm going to do here basically is I'm just going to take this little push pin and push it out. This is basically a thumbtack. I found the easiest way is to just go in there and gently push on it until the remnants comes out. I'll try going on this other end as well. And the idea is to put as little pressure on this as possible. I don't want to break anything. I'm not going to use a hammer for obvious reasons, but if I push too hard, I can break it. I hate doing this part of it. I could break the bottom of the horn off to fit it better, but I really don't want to do that. Come on, get in there. I don't understand how someone didn't notice this was broken for so long or just couldn't be bothered taking care of it. I don't know what the deal was. It definitely has room to come out, so let me just keep gently pushing it out. Thinking maybe I need to go on the bottom here. Yeah, it's probably safer if I went through the top. Ah, there it goes. Got it. I don't know if you heard it, that click. That was it going through. Didn't quite get all the way through, but it moved. Old trick to make sure you get the hole out because it is hard to tell. Just simply put a little light on through there, and there it is. Yep, it's out. So I knocked it out. Good. Okay, so that takes care of that. Now I'm ready to install my new horn, or new to this locomotive's horn. I'm pretty sure it is new if I'm honest, and I think this is what was left of it right here. It just came out. Is that it? I think that is, yep. This little piece of plastic right there. So I got that out. Now I'm ready to install the new horn. Found them. I don't know why I couldn't find these. They were right in the drawer I thought they were in. I just couldn't find them. Let's go ahead now and pull them apart. This isn't quite the right horn for it. It's for a Dash 8, but it's essentially the same model. What I'm going to do is I'm going to install them with just a dab of glue and see how that works. Going to get some clear glue out of here in a sec. As such, let it run down a little bit. Horn. And put it right through the hole. If it'll actually stay in my fingers. Don't want to grab it with the tweezers. I'm not sure this would actually survive being held by a pair of tweezers. There we go. It's in. It's in! Okay, so it's in. It's not probably the perfect height, but it'll work well enough. And it's a custom engine. It's not supposed to be perfect. So we'll just let that sit there like that and dry in place. And then I'll do it for the work on this locomotive. And I'll have to come back to this in a while. For you, it'll be instantaneous. For me, it'll probably be a day, a couple hours, something like that. Alrighty, time to get back on this project. As you can see, I've completed the modifications I was planning to do on this locomotive. Again, that includes this, as you saw in the previous episode, at least you should have. Hopefully the footage is okay from that. I've had weird quirks with my camera. There it is, nice in focus. As you see, I've scratched out and done what's called a patch on the actual name, the Norfolk Southern name. And I have penciled in number 2 as my locomotive number, just to keep things very simple. Fewer numbers, the easier it is to get it right. Better chance it is of getting right and not screw up, as they say. And I've also put in the horn, which was missing. I installed it. The paint kind of got all over the place. I tried to apply this. I did this off camera. I had a really hard time trying to get this done, getting the horn to stick. And I finally, after messing around, got the horn in perfectly. The next headache was actually the paint, which I thought would be the easiest part, but the paint kind of exploded all over the place and kind of ran everywhere but where it was supposed to go. I mean, it's sort of on there. You can, obviously it's painted. I mean, it's not, don't get me wrong, it definitely is painted, but it really is not one of my greatest paint jobs ever. As you can see, the paint also ran down the side over here. I had to remove it from the, I was able to stop it from getting on the actual, oh, this darn thing will cooperate. I was able to stop it from getting on the actual windows themselves, but it was a real pain to get in place. So anyway, not the greatest project I ever completed, but it's going to do fine. Again, this is a first attempt, and it'll still make a very usable locomotive. Again, this is a rustic locomotive, so it doesn't have to be perfect, and that's part of its charm, that it's not perfect. So, my next phase today is going to be to go through and actually start to reassemble this locomotive. To do that, of course, I have to get my parts out, which I've had sitting over here in this vat, as you saw me, or should have seen me from the last episode. I put this in alcohol. It's been resting now in this alcohol for about a week. Going to now take it all out and start to let it dry off. So you can see it definitely did its job. You can see the little bits and pieces of dirt that got separated from the gears and everything else. So it definitely cleaned some stuff up. Let's go ahead now and place it on here and let them start to dry out. Let me get this shell out of the way so I don't accidentally destroy the paint I just worked on here. I'll put it right up there so it doesn't get damaged by this. I'll start pulling my parts out and just let them dry off a bit here. I'll wipe things where necessary. Clean all of these up because, again, this is, again, what makes contact with the actual physical wheels and transfers the power to the contacts on the frame, which you can see right here. The frame is sitting right there. If these are not clean, you're not going to get power to the actual frame itself, so it doesn't matter how great those connections are. It simply won't work if it can't get power to them to begin with. So I'm going to now go and just work on this. It's going to be a tedious process to get done, but I have no intention of stopping until I get it right. And essentially, this is what I'm going to be doing for the next couple of minutes or so, just going through here and ripping this stuff out and dunking it in alcohol. So I'll leave you right there. Oh, let me actually get some of these other parts out of here and let them dry off. Well, the lubricant should be nicely set apart on this. I think these gears are pretty well cleaned up now. I may go over this with a toothbrush just to make sure. But yeah, let me actually put this one back in here and let it soak a little bit more. This part here can sit. Let me go grab my toothbrush and just show you the tedium that I'm going to be engaged in, which I won't bore you with, but okay, let's now go and get these gears gone through right here. Nothing too much to this. Again, I'm just going to take my brush here and just go in and just run it back and forth through here and get all the dirt that might be left in here out. These look like they cleaned up really well, though. There's nothing in them. That one is at least in really good shape. I'll do it briefly to this side. I don't think there's much grease in the other frame. I was more concerned about what I saw in the gears here, but it looks like that was either dissolved or it came out with the alcohol. So now all I have to do is basically go into these pickups here, clean them out thoroughly, and I should be ready to start reassembling everything here once everything is dried. I'm just going to actually go over the brush a little bit here before I go in there again. Probably let these soak a little bit more before I go back to this. But essentially, yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing now for the next half an hour or so, and I'll get back on this once this is all cleaned up and dried off. Alright, I'm going to start assembling things now that I've done the clean out job and went over everything with a toothbrush. I'm going to dump this out in a second. Let me get it out of the way. Got all these pickups here cleaned out, all set to go. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and set the trucks up. To reassemble them is pretty simple. I'm going to go ahead and place these metal brackets right on top of the actual needle points on each side of the truck itself. There's actually a little lock-in area here that they go into. I don't know why this camera is acting up. I did just clean my lens, and for some reason it's still not staying in focus. I don't know what's going on here. I may have to get another camera. Let's see if this thing will work now. So that's in place. Let's grab another one of these. As long as you don't try to put them on, backwards, make sure that the cup, if you will, of this little cutout here where the axle rides in is right on top of the needle point, like so. And make sure your camera stays in focus. There we go. Place it on like so. Again, you see the wheels are now clean. They are worn, but they are clean, so that'll do fine. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to take one of my truck assemblies and just snap this right onto the bottom. Keeping pressure on the top here. This should now go right in place. So I'm just going to go ahead now and just slip the cover on here and just lock it in place. There we go. I think that's in place. Yep, there you go. You see the little tabs are now in place at the bottom. And that does it. This is all together. All together stuck to. There it is. Now it's working. I don't know what was wrong with it. It's moving now. May have to mess with that one a little bit more. What's going on here? It's not lined correctly. That's strange. And also as a kind of an experiment for myself to leave the thing assembled and see how it would see if the alcohol would be successful in getting rid of most of the lubricants and making it so it would work again and not have to not force me to have to tear the whole thing apart just to do it. Especially considering how limited the greasing was on these engines. Doesn't like this had any maintenance in its life, especially considering the condition the motor was in when I went over that with the alcohol before. Let's now turn this upside down again and make sure I have these things sitting in position correctly. I'll probably have to take that truck apart and see what happened with the other one and see what's going on there. This looks like it's in good shape. Let's go now and one of these looks like it's bent a little bit. This is bent just a bit here. Let me bend it up. Let me get this a little bit bent back. There we go. Very critical, you want tension on these. These have to have tension in those little pickup areas or they won't work correctly. And these needle point pickup things. Let's get this in there. Okay, after messing with these for a while, I finally got them together. They are rolling smoothly again. Messed around with my camera setup. Again, I got everything to work, and yep, that's all I really wanted was to get these things together, and they are, and yeah, that's how they're going to be. I've already assembled one of the worm gears. I'm just going to go ahead now and do the second. Now I got a second one of these piled up over here. I guess they must have accidentally put too many of these thrust washers. I'm going to show you how these things go together. This one part is already assembled previously. I put the thrust washer in place on the end of the shaft here. This is again to protect the plastic bearing on the other end. I use the rest of this to go on the next gear. Going to now take the other end, put it on the other bearing end and put it on here. Place the bearing in place here. Rotate the shaft over until it matches this up, until this slides into place, and then just slip this in place as I just did there. Like so. And that's the first worm gear in place, and if I spin it, you can tell by the grease that I have, in fact, installed it correctly because it does turn. Do the same thing with this one here. Slide into place. I'm going to probably have to rotate the shaft to make this fit correctly. Rotate the shaft until that little piece matches the key and goes in, like so. And make sure that these two blocks are flat and square so they will go into place like they're supposed to. Like that. Ooh, almost had it. Almost. There we go. That's in place. And it does work. Okay, so now I'm just going to go and take a little grease and put it just there. Oh, I think I put too much in it. Again, that's all I'm going to put in. That's good. Okay, so let's now spin this over. And there it is. It is working. So now, I'm ready to do final assembly on this. I have to get my decoder out. That'll come next. That'll be my next step. On that, I'm currently done for now. Pick this up in a little bit, in a couple hours from now. So my unusual schedule, I'm going to head to sleep at this point, and I will pick this up and be a couple hours for me. But for you, it'll be instantaneous. fixed. God, no, come on. Alrighty, and without further ado, let's get to the testing phase. Let's see how this NC decoder works. These are a bit of a bargain I found on eBay. Probably on eBay, Amazon. I think this was Amazon. Smoke test. They don't have they lack the latches the newer decoders have that you can like put a decoder in with. That have those sort of grooves in the actual motor connection, so the engine, so the motor contacts stay in place securely. So I'm interested to see how well this will work. Haven't used one of these in quite some time. I'd help if I turned my power strip on, wouldn't it? Oh, yeah, it works. Freaks me out, but this thing is always stuck on address 3 for some reason. I don't know why. Forward, reverse, forward. A little funky. Again, this hasn't run in a while. There it goes. It's going to be a little jumpy, I think, until it breaks in a little bit. This has not run in a while. The motor's got to get used to running. The decoder seems a little bit funky, too, if I'm honest. Check on power. So let's see how the power is going, because it looks like I've got some power issues here. That's fine. Front truck is good. Rear truck is good. So yeah, it looks like I just need to run this a bit to get it used to running. Maybe scrape some junk off the wheels a bit. I find that sometimes helps it. This is my test track. I can always clean it, which I probably will eventually. For some reason, the decoder, for some reason, the light flickers as it runs. Seems like a power problem. It's a little sensitive for some reason. I don't know why. Seems okay. Seems to be getting better. Oh, rats. Ran off the track, not a smart move. Never do that, folks. I was just testing you there. That was not in any way a mistake at all on my part. Not. Wish I could say, which is what I wish I could say, but I can't. Oh, boy. Okay, this is running a little rough, but getting better. Nice thing about the Atlas N-Scale engine is that all the gears are in the trucks themselves with a drivetrain. So it isn't as... So it's pretty easy to do a major gear repair on this. All you do is swap the trucks out. And as you know, the trucks just drop right off on this unit. And now it runs much better. I guess the drop on the floor fixed something. Yep. Now it's much better. Okay, I'll take that. Don't know why it made a difference, but apparently must have locked something into shape that wasn't. Let me just check this decoder board to make sure it's nice and secure in here. Slightly loose. That's actually pretty good there. Let me tighten this down a little bit more. These screws are infamous for not wanting to get tight enough, I find. This later version of the Atlas chassis has a similar design to all the others, but the screws are slightly different, and they don't grip quite as well on this version of it. It is exactly the same other than the screws, and I sometimes actually will retrofit other screws with this. It's a weird quirk. Again, Atlas locomotives went through several minor revisions. The parts are usually compatible with each other, which is the nice thing, so you can always retrofit and actually get parts off of another engine. For those of you not into model railroading, yes, like real railroads, we model railroaders also do what the real railroads do and buy parts locomotives. Because sometimes it's just how you handle it. Sure everything's free here. Seems to be running pretty well. It's weird how that thing is fluctuating. I think it's just the decoder being a bit funky. This was a cheap decoder, but I'm going to call that good. I'm going to assume the rest of it it'll get better with break-in. Decoder is kind of loose a little bit, is what I'm thinking. It's not abundantly loose. It's pretty tight in there. It's not going anywhere per se, but just weird. Stuffing at the contacts on the wheels, that's kind of strange. A little bit on the front truck maybe, but not too bad. Just run this back and forth a few more times. That's better. That one truck came off the track there. Yeah, I think that'll do fine. It's got a weird flicker to it when it runs. Not sure why that is, but power pickup is fine. It's doing what it's supposed to do. So I'm going to assume that's okay, basically, yeah. Ooh, I didn't want it to take off that fast. It's kind of funky, too. It does a sudden response. I'm wondering if the decoder itself is a little bit messy. Okay, I'm calling it. I'm going to say this is in good enough shape to enter service. It probably will need to run a little bit more. I don't like how loose this is. It's a little loose, but it's not flickering. It's flickering a little, but not too bad. Not exactly sure why it is like that. I could try to put it in there, but I don't really think there's much room to put any solder on these little nubs that this thing sits on. So I'm not sure what that would do. Let me go ahead and put the shell on. Maybe that'll do that. Maybe that'll tighten it up the amount it needs. Let me also go grab my light deflector thing, which is supposed to keep the lights flowing so that they go through the light bulbs of the locomotive itself. No, that's not it. Let's try this one. If I can't find it, I can't find it. No, that's definitely not the right one. And this should have been the right one, but apparently not. Oh, it is the right one. Okay, that is the right one. Okay, Let's put the top back on, shell back on, I should say. You can tell that's the front because it has the little notch to clip that little protector thing in. I'm just going to gently place this in position, slip it down, and there it is, all back together. One last test, then I'm going to program it. Should be on the track, lights are on. Let's try it again. Not bad considering I was about to junk this thing for parts. It's now running quite nicely. I think I pulled it off. I dare say it. I think I can avoid jinxing it at this point, but you never know. Let's go to Program. Let's go on the main track and assign this, because I have now given a custom assignment. This is number 3, officially from the factory. But we're going to change this address to 2. Hit Enter here and program it. That little jerk tells me, not making fun of the locomotive, but the fact that the locomotive actually jerked tells me that the locomotive has been accepted. It's accepted its new address, so go to address 2. So we're on address 2 now. As you can see, the locomotive is moving. Get on address 2 now. Nice and smooth. So you're not a perfect engine by any exception, but that's actually part of the beauty of these engines, that you don't have to be perfect. So I may eventually cross out the logo on the front, but accidentally that's okay. I've now crossed out the Norfolk Southern logo right in the... I've crossed out everything else that's Norfolk Southern, so I think that'll be fine with white ink. So yeah, I think I'm just going to call it right there. And yeah, so with that, I pulled it off. I've salvaged this engine. And I'm going to finish this video off right there. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If not, thumbs down. Please like and subscribe. And as always, keep the metal side down.